Welcome back to Our Canada, Our Future. We're talking about hate speech, and to do that, I'm joined here by Jamie Sarkonak, who's a freelance columnist and recently wrote on this subject in the National Post. Now, Jamie, it's fair to say that the idea of a hate speech is not something a lot of people like. Being hateful is not a fun thing or a pleasant thing. And the organization in question, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, they hold themselves out as fighting hard against free speech as a sort of scourge on society. But I guess I put it to you, given the problems with this organization's view on these things, what do you say to those people who argue that hateful speech and ideas are, in fact, a problem and need to be dealt with, and that it's better to have groups like the Anti-Hate Network sort of flagging this stuff and trying to equip people to deal with it?
Yeah, I'd say generally that's correct, but we take different ideological approaches. So for a classical liberal view, it's, free speech matters, but, if you say something that's bad and hateful, it should be able to be explored and then corrected through debate. There's plenty of logical and rational ways to dispel this kind of stuff without calling for greater regulation, without calling for people to be proactively silenced. Um, what they're doing is useful in some sense. This 50-page guidebook that they offered gives a lot of information about different fringe right-wing groups that, if you're a teacher or a parent, you probably never heard about, and frankly, a lot of people haven't ever heard about. So, there's good information there. It's just trying to extend that further into any policy discussion, broadly using the words problematic politician, problematic policy, things that are well within the realm of talking about. It's a little overreaching. The students, for example,
Mm.
if they like Trump's policies, should be able to talk about them and argue about them. And hey, if they're bad, have other students come in to give the opposing side. What the toolbook or what the guidebook would suggest is to not enable that conversation at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's one thing to provide information, and it's another to sort of provide all these recommendations about what to do about people who say certain things, which I think is what's happening with this particular guidebook. Also, is it fair to say that the main reason this is controversial is not that this guidebook exists; it's that it was paid for with taxpayer money. Canadians are being forced to pay for this, and if you look at something like the Red Ensign, for example, if you're for example, a veteran who fought under the Red Ensign, your tax dollars are going towards a booklet that is essentially warning that the flag you fought under is a hate symbol.
Yeah, it would be as simple as not giving a grant to a like a very politically oriented organization. I think if that wasn't there, this would be a lot more broad. But with this toolbook, for example, it was not directed by government, but it was under the financial support of the government. And then when it was released, it was done in a launch that was facilitated by a minister, a federal minister, with the Canadian government's logo on it and resources to do sort of the media push on it. So yeah, like it's a lot of taxpayer money going into something that has a certain political bent. There was a lot of discussion um, about the government giving grants to organizations to employ students for the summer and requiring them to have values attestations, for example, on the conservative side. And people didn't generally like that. And this is kind of, it has echoes of that for me.
Yeah, it's fair to say that it's going to be very controversial if there's sort of an ideological litmus test for organizations that receive taxpayer money.
Yeah, I'd say so. And it's not clear, like on the granting procedure, what made the government want them to give the grant. It was part of a larger anti-hate initiative where plenty of groups were given grants to do this kind of work. But yeah, it's ideological, and it sort of calls into question the partisanship of the granting mechanisms and the department and all that. So if they could just stick to the basics, there's hate speech in criminal law. There's clearly hateful material out there. That would be far less of a problem. But when they extend it into politicians, policies, and use vaguer language around it, it becomes kind of a bigger question.
Yeah, I think it might be a matter of taxpayer money funding information versus taxpayer money funding what essentially amounts to advocacy for certain things. And I think it's fair to argue that there's a difference between those things. We're going to take a very short break, and we're going to be right back after these messages.